Hello YouTube vintage stereo collectors and restorers. I'm just finishing off this BFW, BF Washerama. Let's just call it the Washerama receiver. Model 4077. And although you may never find one, they're pretty darn rare. They're not worth much. They're just, it's one of those, and it should be worth more because it's a really good sounding design. So I'm just going to kind of go over some of the things that makes it a good design and some of the things that I don't like about it. One thing that's amazing is all the controls and switchgear, I have not sprayed them with any contact cleaner, any deoxit, any neutral, any of that stuff. There isn't the least bit of crackle. There's no trace that they've ever been sprayed, no residue. And these sometimes get noisy, none of them are noisy. Everything's really smooth. They use good controls. They look like Centralab controls actually. This thing was assembled in Canada and many of the parts were US or Canadian, which is kind of cool. It has all original transistors in it. They're all Motorola transistors. Where those are made, I'm not 100% sure, but just give you a shot of this here. I'm just going to give it a little more light. Yeah. So I recapped the main board. This main board was very easy to recap because what's on the top is on the bottom. It's full access. Only thing I could say is the spacing here is a little bit hard. What's neat about what's a good design on it? Well, emitter resistors are right there, close by, in proximity of the two bias controls, and they're the larger bias controls, and they're like, I haven't sprayed them or anything, they're smooth as anything. And the bias for some reason was turned to 0. The outputs were not being biased, although they were turning on. But for best sound you should bias them. And so this is what I like about it. It's easy to change parts in this. If you want to make sure, you know, the bias is actually biasing outputs, well, you just clip on across an emitter resistor. And I set the bias for about 5 millivolts across one emitter resistor, which is times 0.47. So it's about 10 milliamps of current as a starting point, and it's very stable. So that's kind of cool. You set it and it just drifted up about 1 millivolt, which is just fine. And so everything, I only set it once, both sides. Really hasn't. It's just drifted up a little bit. See what I mean? Anyway, so it's a stable design. It uses heat sensing diodes here to control the bias as it heats up, prevent thermal runaway. It's not a huge power output unit, for sure. It's not huge, but you've got clearly defined areas, very easy to work on. I did the capacitor video in my last video. One thing that's a little bit of an issue, some of the boards, they use, instead of metal fasteners, they use plastic. Those plastic standoffs. I don't know if you've ever come across those in your work. There's a board underneath that's a protection board. So it has, let's just see how good it looks before I turn it off. Good looking display. Great looking display. Like that. One of the negatives on it, it is a heavy unit. Very thick chassis. Let's get that within your range. Yeah, so this here, I figured this out, because there isn't a schematic available for this. It's just like the Kenwood protection circuit. So it's not DC, well, it's DC sensing, but it doesn't open a relay. There isn't a speaker relay here. There isn't a protection relay. It takes output from the speakers, from the speaker jacks actually, across these resistors. These are not transistors, they're diodes. It rectifies the output and checks the DC level. So this right here is the DC level. This wire here goes to the B+ power supply for the preamplifier. And what happens if the DC level here gets too high, and it's about 600 millivolts actually, it will actually turn on this transistor, which puts that to ground, and then the preamp stops preamping, and, well, hopefully it will solve your problem. It doesn't solve your problem if you have a blown output, but anyway, I did recap that, but it was on plastic standoffs, and you just touch them and they snap. So I put a bolt and nut here, screw and nut, and then just a wire tie there, because on the other side there were connections for the antenna, and it was getting in the way. But anyway, as you can see, it's very easy to work on. So I'm just going to say, in reviewing this, it's nice to work on. It's kind of a patriotic unit because it was made in Canada in an era when so many parts, capacitors, transistors, everything were made in Canada or the US. It has one heck of a nice look to it. Works, and here's the other thing, it sounds great. I don't know what it is about, some units have good FM, and this one has great FM, and a lot of units I'll say, oh, this one has great FM too. What do I mean by great FM? I use an alligator clip, and depending on, if I can get a lot of stations in stereo without a lot of noise, I consider that to have great FM. If I can get some of the ones in this quadrant of the dial where they're very close together without it smearing, you have to take the AFC off, but it's just a good, the tuner in this performs as good as many and much more expensive units. It was a good design. I noticed this in Electrohome consoles, and this tuner board I've seen in Electrohome consoles. It was in a very similar looking, same knobs, same kind of switches, but more square. Anybody that's worked on those old consoles from the 70s know what I mean. I think what this model actually is console stereo components made into a component receiver. And those consoles had excellent FM. Many people didn't want to give them up. I said, well, it picks up the Wingham station. You know, it just works so well. I have not tried the phono stage. Here's a great thing, okay? It did not have any C458 transistors in it, not a one. They're all Motorola transistors. There isn't any black lead disease on any of them. And the phono preamp, without anything connected to it, is just a nice quiet shh, like that. No crackle, no weird sounds, nothing like that. And the thing is dead quiet with volume control down. And it seems to be fairly gutsy. And here's what's kind of weird about it. The first cap was a 63 volt 1000 microfarad. And initially I put in a 63 volt 3000 microfarad. It was a new can, and I laid it on the board and added leads to it, and it just looked goofy. But I put it in that way, listened to it, put a couple speakers on it, pushed it a bit. I'm like, yeah, this sounds really good. And for whatever reason, I put silicone glue on that cap to hold it to the board. It wouldn't stick to this board. There's some kind of a oily sheen on everything in here. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put a standard cap in there. I drilled an extra hole, and I put 1000 microfarad back in. And to be honest, is something I've often said, the stock 1000 microfarad value, I can't tell any difference in the sound. The bass doesn't hum. It sounds every bit as good as the 3300. Anyway, I just wanted to wrap this one up because I'm going to put it on my main system and listen to it for a while, just for yucks. Thanks for watching and listening.